This is an RNZ podcast.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Your Money with me, Mary Holm. Thanks for taking just a few minutes to listen in while Jessie Mulligan and I talk through some useful ideas about how to make your money work better for you. Just remember though, this is guidance. Final decisions are up to you. Over to Jessie.
Mary Holm is a financial author and journalist, and she's in with us every couple of weeks to talk money. Today, looking at the results of a new survey by the Commission for Financial Capability. In fact, a couple of prize winners to announce first, Mary.
Yes. Well, last time, Jessie, we did this financial knowledge quiz, remember?
It was great fun.
And it was. And you talked me into giving away a couple of my books, which was brilliant. I mean,
bullied, some would say.
Yeah. My book, Rich Enough. So we got two winners. I think you've got the name of one of them there, have you?
Jordan Jones of Inglewood. Well done.
Yes, Jordan was one of the people who got them all right.
Mm-hmm.
Then you mentioned that there were some people who got quite a few wrong, and you thought maybe they needed the book more. And so afterwards, I thought that's good thinking. So we also sent a copy of the book to somebody else that we think it might be diplomatic not to name her, but I hope the book is helpful to her too.
Thanks for doing that, Mary.
Yeah.
Well, there was an objection to one of the answers in the quiz, I think.
Yes, there was. Yes, yeah. Some people said we should have taken into account tax withheld on savings accounts, and that's a fair point. The Commission, when they did the survey, they didn't do that, and I didn't even think of doing it. But to those listeners who did take tax into account, withholding tax into account, that answer was correct too. Okay. Let's just say that. But then there were a couple of other people who texted into you who had sort of more strongly worded objections to this.
Yeah, sorry you had to read those, Mary. I think they were. They were lumped in with the winners that I sent you.
And I get that on my Herald column sometimes too. It's all good fun.
You develop thick skin being in the public eye.
You do, don't you? Yes, yeah. But just before, I thought it might be interesting to read those couple of comments out. But firstly, I just want to say the context of it. We were talking about gender differences in the findings from the Commission's survey. And what they found is twice as many men as women got them all correct, and the gender difference increased with age. So the younger men and women were equal, but then the men got wiser as they got older, and the women not so much. Mm-hmm. And so by the time you got to women over 65 or whatever, they were way behind the men. And women who have children have lower scores than women without children, and single women with no kids did the best of all the women. And on the strength of my pointing that out, there were a couple of texts that you might like to read out. From
Mary, implying that women are lazy and leaving the financial labour to men is anti-feminist and it's plain wrong, etc.
Yes, and then there was another one.
What I actually... Oh, sorry. Please join the dots and stop reinforcing misogyny. Is that the one?
Yes, that was one. And then another one was in capital letters, stop blaming women for their inequitable place in society, Mary.
Oh, sorry.
They are doing all the housework and don't have time to read the financial pages. Mm-hmm. And I thought, oh gosh. So I went back and actually listened on the podcast.
Honestly, I have to do that myself sometimes.
Do you?
Yeah,
listen. Gosh,
did I really say that?
Yeah. And what I said was that I was worried that women are still relying on their men to run the money, and some women tell themselves money is too hard, and therefore they can feel trapped in a relationship because it's hard to leave if they feel financially incompetent. And all of that's true. And I'm sorry if it upset some listeners, but I think, it's very important that we face the fact that women aren't doing as well as men in their financial knowledge rather than just not talk about it. It's much better to talk about it and then hopefully do something about it. Yeah. So apologies if I upset some people, but there were a couple of more positive messages.
There always are loads more positive texts like this one. Yes. I didn't get organised to text my answers, but I'm a 76-year-old female who raised 3 children and I got 100%.
Yes.
And someone else got 100%, says I'm 71. And I wouldn't have scored so well prior to my husband passing away 4 years ago, but needs must.
Yes, that second one's interesting, isn't it? And so she is saying that when her husband passed away, she had to learn more about finance. And I would just urge women, please don't wait until that happens. I mean, that must be horrid. You're facing the death of your partner, and then you're also facing worries about your money. It really puts women in a weak place if they don't feel in control of the finances of the family. So please get in and try and remedy that, which leads us into the another survey that the Commission for Financial Capability has done on money and relationship problems. And some quite interesting findings there. They found that 1 in 5 people had relationship problems with partners, family or close friends due to financial concerns. So the money problems were quite common, especially with the young. The aged 18 to 34, about a quarter of those people have financial problems getting in the way of their relationship. By the time you get to 65, it was only 7% of the people, which is interesting that it just decreased over the years. But I suspect that's probably partly because the ones that did have money problems broke up, and the ones that are still together,
maybe
is possibly partly what
maybe
happened.
you learn to live with the quirks of your partner.
Yes.
Some people might think 1 in 5 is a bit lower than expected.
Yeah, I look,
It's a pretty
these
big driver
surveys,
of stress, isn't it?
It sure is. Yeah, that's a good point. These surveys are sometimes very dependent on exactly how the question is worded. More to the point, though, there were some quite interesting sort of points about who did worse and then what could be done about it. That might be, regardless of the percentage of the population. They found that there were higher rates of financial problems hurting relationships for people with children 0 to 4 years old, which is, that's distressing. It's hard enough with little kids, and you've got financial problems as well.
But also, if you're not getting any sleep, everything in your life seems more stressful.
Absolutely, that's definitely part of it, and possibly also quite often one partner's not working. To help look after the kids, and that probably adds to the financial stress as well. So there was an interesting thing on income, though. There was problems if your income was low, but then the second to highest group for having marital problems to do with money were the people that were making more than $150,000. So go figure. I mean, who knows what that was about. The people in the middle weren't so bad. So there's some sort of quite big financial problems amongst the richer people as well. Conflict was more likely if there was a lack of long-term financial planning, which is predictable, propensity to spend rather than save, and a reluctance to discuss money. And those are all fairly predictable, I suppose. The Commission quoted some interesting American research, I thought, that said financial disagreements, especially perceptions of partners overspending, were more likely to predict divorce. So you've got couples fighting over one of them saying the other one's spending too much, which is probably quite common.
Particularly in that $150,000 plus category as well. Maybe that's where those problems are coming in.
Yeah, possibly. They're just...
not necessarily that you don't have enough to make ends meet, but that somebody's spending more than you would really like to be spending.
More than the other one thinks they should. It's just... It just takes me back to a conversation recently with a woman who was a very successful career woman, but she and her partner were quite wealthy. But he said, "You're bad with money, and so I don't want you to have anything to do with the money." And she said, I said, "Well, what does bad with money mean? Do you spend a lot?" And she said, "Yes, I do." And so the couple was sort of, that's where they were at. And I felt that she kind of might want to actually leave the marriage. She wasn't that happy in it. But she said, "I don't know anything about our finances. I just don't feel I can go."
What were their names?
Fred and Susie.
Okay, that's nice names.
Yeah. So, moving along a bit, but I mean, it really is food for thought that whether it's the man or the woman, and certainly in some couples the woman runs the money, there's no doubt about that. It goes both ways, but it's really important for both of them to understand their financial situation, and it's not that hard. Money's not that hard. No. What you can do about it, there's some interesting the Commission quoted some interesting research by a woman called Linda Skogrand. I don't know anything about her, but she said the financial recipe for a great relationship is having little or no debt or planning to pay off your debt, number one. There are 4 things. Number 2 is equal access to financial resources. So you can't have one partner able to spend money and the other one's not, really. That's not, I mean, it's actually, I think it often works quite well for each partner to have some money that they can just spend whatever way they want and they're not answerable.
Yeah.
But it's got to be equal. Keep each other informed about all financial developments, that's pretty obvious. And do not make large purchases without the approval of the other partner. I think I told you, a couple of years back about my friend's mother when I was a kid who bought a house at an auction without her husband knowing, because she wasn't planning to buy it, but she thought it was such a good price that she...
that happens today. I can tell you, I've heard a couple of those stories recently.
Really?
As well.
Really?
That one partner, they were in the market, but in fact, I've got to say two close couples that I know.
Really?
Yeah, the one, they just trusted the other one to make the decision and bought it without the other one seeing it.
Well, I suppose if they were the other one already, in the case I'm talking about, they weren't in the market for buying a house. She just
it's a bit different, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes, but in your situation, that could be really good reflection of the trust they have in one another and the knowledge they have with their whole situation. Yeah. A couple of other points. The Sorted website's got quite a lot of tips on how to have a successful money conversation. If you go onto it and do a search on the word talk, I was looking at just tips on how to open that conversation and get things going. We've got time for a few more tips from Sorted. They say avoid the blame game. First, find some common ground and design a basic budget for those things you agree on, and then build from there. So rather than sitting there and saying you spend too much on this or you're too mean. I mean, on the other side of spending too much is that some people are too mean.
Yeah.
They want to save too much for their retirement or whatever else, and they're not enjoying life in the meantime, and there's certainly an argument that way. But so Sorted saying don't get into blaming one another. Instead, find what you do agree on and start from there and build from there. And then another thing, which is pretty darn obvious, is that it's important to be honest. There's no point in hiding things like debt. They're saying, come clean and get it all over with in one conversation. And look, that probably is the case with some people, that they've got debt and they haven't told their partner. But, I mean, that can't, in the long run, that's just not going to work, is it? These things get found out and horrible stuff. And then finally, and I thought this was a really important piece of writing, this is how they sort of are defining financial abuse. They say, if your partner is controlling your money, running up debts in your name, or stopping you from being financially independent or earning your own money, that's abusive. Make sure to get help. They're saying that you are actually being abused by their definition.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's good, strong language for a government-sponsored site,
it
isn't it?
Isn't it?
Yeah,
it's very honest, I think. One other point, Money Talks, all one word, their website, they offer free financial mentoring to everybody. Anybody who comes along, and they have mentors all over New Zealand. It's not just in the big cities. So if you have a look on the Money Talks website, because a lot of couples might find that it's better to actually talk their money differences through with a third person there, a mentor to stop them from being too horrible to one another, or to just point out that the basic issues they've got. Yeah.
A few interesting texts in here. I often ask my wife to sit down at the table and go through our financial situation and the options, the incoming and the outgoing, but she finds it all a bit tedious and boring and upsetting, so we tend to avoid it.
Yes. And in the short run, yes, that probably does make things more harmonious, but I just say to the woman in that one, please be brave. It's honestly not as hard as you think.
I don't find it surprising conflict is related to wealth, says Karen. Money is power and obviously a source of conflict too.
Yeah, interesting point.
Yeah, that will probably do it. Thanks. Mary Holm, thank you for coming in.
It's a pleasure, Jesse.
Yeah, Mary's in every couple of weeks talking money here on RNZ National. And her book is called Rich Enough, a laid-back guide for every Kiwi. And well done to Jordan and that other winner.